Greetings, everyone, and welcome back. I'm here again with Sid, who just survived the lightning round, and now we're having an extended conversation, as we always do. How's it going, Sid?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, and like I say, I'm proud of you. You survived the lightning round. This will be a much less stressful experience. There's no clock running. No.
No clock.
I'm looking forward to diving more into some of these topics. I think one thing I wanted to kind of start with was the misconceptions around work in information technology. You and I have probably seen movies, and we know exactly what you mentioned. A lot of people think if I'm in information technology, I'm locked in the basement and all I do is code all day. What's the reality? Like, what have you seen in terms of different types of work in information technology from your own experience?
Yeah, I mean, information technology is not often, all about coding. That's what people think is, what is shown in the movie is a black screen with white dots and just like screens, tons and tons of characters just going through the screen. And people like typing ferociously at their keyboard, which is the classic stereotype for developers. But oftentimes developers, although, they are one of the major components of any technology company, but, they're still a component that requires a lot of oversight, a lot of thinking, a lot of methodical, analytical framework, to be able to bring out a technology in a consumable product. So there's oftentimes a difference between technology and products. So technology is the backbone of a product, but then the product is something that is the impactful component at the end of the day. And to bring that technology or convert that technology into a product, you need a lot of different kinds of people. So there are product managers, which is what my new role is about, is helping understand what the problem statement is outside, and how do you use a technology to be able to solve that problem. Then there are people who bring technology to the market, be it consumers or businesses as well. Those are oftentimes people who work in marketing. And then obviously, because you're running a company, there comes all of the components along with it, like like HR, finance, et cetera. And a lot of these functions are very nuanced to the technology sector, because the sector functions very differently, in terms of the dynamics, in terms of, how they sell products, how the products are charged, what's the revenue model. So there's roles for everyone at the end of the day. It's just about, you don't have to be a technologist to work in technology, and you can be, at the end of the day, you just have to be someone who has the right temperament and who has the interest to work in the company or in the industry.
Very, very cool. No, it's really interesting. It's been my experience as well. I was surprised, even in my own work, about how significant the people component was. I guess I'm not surprised. I'm kind of surprised how surprised I was. I mean, it makes sense that, especially if you're in a large company, you're going to work with other people. But in a typical day, even as a solutions architect, a lot of your time is interacting with other people, right? You're not just hammering out a solution.
Correct. Exactly. Yeah. So you're not just hammering out a solution, you're also talking to people, because at the end of the day, you're building a solution for a problem. And so the core part is understanding the problem in its depth. You can oftentimes, people who work in technology could be siloed by, just the technology itself, and people get very passionate about it and they just want to put a solution to market. But then there's a lot of components of the problem statement and had that you want to, analyze before you actually apply technology, which helps you take a step back, look at the right technology that you need to apply, and then, do you even need technology in the first place to be able to use it or to be able to solve that problem?
I love that. That's another thing that I think came out a little bit in the lightning round. But this tendency, especially if you're a technology enthusiast, which obviously you and I, without a question, are, right? But the tendency to always try and solve problems with technology. Do you have an example, Sid, of anything you've experienced recently or in your career where there was a genuine problem, but the answer wasn't somebody developing a piece of technology to solve it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one thing that I always love to tell people about, somebody trying to solve a problem with technology while the problem was with the way they were performing the process itself is, as in my last company, we made a product that can extract data from documents. And so, that leverages, artificial intelligence and machine learning, which are the buzzwords about technology that people often talk about. So the customer had a strategy of leveraging an AI/ML product to be able to solve the problem. And the problem was that they had, tons and tons of different forms that were coming in. But the simple question that they kind of missed that I asked them was like, who actually scans these documents? You want to actually extract data from scanned documents. So, you want this technology to be able to read data intelligently, but then who scans these documents? documents. So it turns out that the documents are sent digitally over email, then they're printed out, and then they're scanned, and then you want to apply software to be able to extract data from those documents. So maybe you don't need someone to scan those documents, but you can actually just send those documents digitally to the person who
Yeah.
wants to extract it, which saves the technology layer that you're adding just to be an AI/ML adopter. So I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions out there is, it's just the way you're doing processes, and you don't really need technology to be able to solve any problem.
Absolutely. I just want to amen everything you just said. Uh,
Mhm.
I think that's, when we talk about what makes a great solution architect, I think what you just said is probably a big piece of it, right? So being able to first understand the problem and then understand what components of it can be, directly solved or aided by technology, but then what are the pieces where you could use technology, but you're just going to maybe even exacerbate the issue or band-aid it, but you're not really getting to the root cause. Does
Correct.
that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that summarizes it perfectly. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. You mentioned, we talked a little bit about some of the challenges in working in technology.
Mhm.
Uh, and I think one thing you mentioned is the pace of change. It's transformational, but
Mhm.
the need to continually learn because the technology is continually changing. Is there anything specific that you do or that you recommend in terms of things people can do to keep on top of it? If people are just starting out in a career in information technology, how do you
Mhm.
keep up?
Yeah, I think, keeping up with technology is, oftentimes hard because there's so many vendors out there in the market, and, there's so much technology to keep up on. What I do personally is, because I have been passionate about like artificial intelligence and machine learning, I do subscribe to newsletters, like, because we are in the era of internet today. It's really easy to go to Google, type anything, search about it, search about what's new. If I want to go learn it, there's so many MOOCs out there. There's, so many companies that actually offer courses, for you to be able to learn that technology, not just from a technical perspective, but even from a high level perspective of what it can do, so that it gives you a good understanding, of what you can apply it for, what does it do. So yeah, I think, I go to a lot of different websites for newsletters, and then, I use a lot of MOOCs online, to be able to learn about new technologies or learn about the changes in the technology that I have been using for a while.
Okay, very cool. Hey, so Sid, I know in the lightning round you mentioned your first work
Mhm.
in information technology. I think was with Deloitte, a consulting position in Deloitte. Uh, Information technology. Would you say it's a pretty competitive landscape? Like when there's an opening for an information technology job, pretty competitive. A lot of people are typically applying.
Yes, so I think a lot of people do apply. I think it's a field that has definitely transformed, the way we work. Just because of the different work culture style. The way that the industry has been very agile with the products that they've built, and so that has created a lot of attraction amongst people. To be able to join the technology. I've seen a lot of people who've switched professions and join technology because
Right.
of the fact that it's very flexible. So that leads to a lot of competition at the end of the day.
Right.
However, I think we still are at a, there's a stat which says that we are still in, we have a big gap of technology professionals that need to, that we need to fill up. So there's a lot of roles still open for which, companies are not able to find the talent. And so the drive has been by a lot of countries, and not just the United States, has been to, encourage people to get into technology by giving them trainings, encouraging them to take MOOCs, and because people realize that's how, that's what our future will be about as well.
What's a MOOC, Sid?
A MOOC is an online learning course, so it's a mass online course. I actually forgot the full form of a MOOC, which is interesting, but a MOOC is basically like a course on Coursera, for example.
Right.
That's
Right.
what you call a MOOC. Yeah.
Right. And I know during this time with COVID, there's been lots of discounts and things like that. Lots of
Yeah.
incentives for people to take those. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, that is correct. Yeah.
So Sid, if somebody's in the middle of a college program, university, I'm in Canada, we call it a university program, and they're looking at this kind of competitive landscape, working in information technology. Other than getting good marks, what are some other things that they can do to prepare for work in information technology? Anything else you would advise that they'd be focused on?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, having some capability of, having the right temperament is always the first thing. If you really want to get into technology, having an understanding of what technology is about. I know obviously in like being in high school or in the middle of college, there's so much information that you can get confused oftentimes with the options that you have.
Yes.
But just I used to just read about stuff on the internet about like what are the roles within technologies. I used to connect with like the different alums that I had, who ended up working in technology, who gave me a much clearer perspective of, what exactly is it that you can do in terms of roles, not just
Yeah.
coding, but, also different roles like solutions architects and product managers that you can pursue. What kind of skill sets do you need? And then, a lot of companies, obviously, technology companies have great internship programs that you can always go look up at. And they extend anywhere up until the second year of college or even the first year. So a lot of students in their first year can actually go do some internships within technology. Obviously, with the increasing number of technology companies, there's increasing number of internship positions, and I think that's
Right.
probably one of the best ways to, go understand what technology is. How does the company function? What are the different roles that you can do?
Absolutely. That's. I'm glad you brought that up. I'm going to do a series of interviews shortly, specifically with some people that have gone through co-op programs.
Yeah.
I actually never did one, but the people that I know that have done them, I think it's one of the best ways to kind of resolve this gap between what am I learning in school and ending up in a job that I really love. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Sid, one thing again, maybe it's back to the misconceptions piece again, that kind of theme. But when you think about creativity in information technology, that might be a surprise to people to think that there's a lot of room for creativity. I think when people think about technology, they think of computers, they think of zeros and ones and very structured, logical type stuff.
Yep.
Maybe not so creative. What's your experience been in terms of the opportunity to be creative as a solutions architect?
Yeah, I mean, when people talk about creativity and technology, most people think that they're two different, spots of the spectrum. I actually think the opposite. I had a colleague or an ex-colleague, who used to work with me, and on his last day, he was a software engineer, wrote some really high quality code. On his last day, I asked him like, "Hey, what do you think you are in life?" And he said, "I think I'm an artist." His perspective was that that you can actually be an artist and you can be a developer at the same time. So software development, for example, is not just about writing code, but it's not just about how less lines of code can you write and to do something, but it's about like how efficiently can you write it.
Sure.
And oftentimes, like software engineers could have crazy design patterns about like things. Obviously it's numbers at the end of the day, so how much can you be creative in manipulating numbers? But when you actually get into the details, you can really understand how creative can just software engineering alone can be. um, Obviously that's just one part of it, which is building technology, but then you get to how creatively you're getting technology to market. So
Yes.
if you look at big companies like Google and Facebook, they have dedicated teams which are consistently doing like user research on understanding, like even Google's logo goes through a ton and ton of research on like user experience and how people perceive objects. And so there's an enormous amount of scope of creativity that you can apply to technology, especially with things like user experience research, which is actually one of the most budding areas of technology in these days.
Very cool. Yeah, I think that's important, and I think back to the theme of problem solving. If you think about, there's this expression that cat lovers don't like, that there's more than one way to skin a cat. But when we think about solving a problem, there's frequently, as you kind of mentioned earlier, there's frequently a million ways to solve the problem, and all of them, maybe some of them don't use technology at all, and then there's a wide spectrum of different ways to implement technology, or partially technology and partially other things. So if you think of yourself as an information technology professional, as a problem solver, man, there's a lot of room to solve the problems in creative ways. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, there's 1,000 ways to solve a problem. It's just about how creative you are, how much can you solve the problem within the constraints that you have. Oftentimes when you work with constraints is when you're, the most creative, the most amount of creativity comes out, of yourself, So if you have only a limited amount of resources or a limited amount of dollars to spend, or, effort that you can put, you can be as creative as you can, with the solutions that you make. And that creativity doesn't only apply to like what mix of technologies is it that you use, but
Yes.
it is also about like where, what kind of not just what kind of technologies, but also, what do you mix technologies with, so you can mix it with some process re-engineering or some other techniques that, are probably already well known, that do not require technology,
Right.
but can solve the problem at the end of the day.
That's awesome. I'm so glad that you mentioned that too. That this idea of having constraints, right? We know that doing that kind of work in the real world, there's always constraints, right? Money's an obvious one. I've never worked for a company that gave me an infinite budget.
Yeah.
But frequently, you've got other constraints too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's many other constraints, like, there's only certain products that you can use, there's certain geographies that you cannot operate in. So when you get into, like, when you deploy technology at scale, that's where, a lot of the other parts of the creativity come into play. As for example, if you look at Uber's business, they are not just building an app for someone to be able to order an Uber, but at the end of the day, they have to understand what are the laws and regulations in every single country, and how exactly can they work around them or work with them, to be able to launch their product. So
Absolutely. Sid, for those that are listening to this interview, I think we've got primarily two different audiences. One being younger folks that might be in high school or just moving into their first degree, post-secondary degree or program, and then other folks that may be in doing a job every day, but they don't really like it, and maybe they're gaining some interest in technology. Any final words of advice for those folks in terms of steps they can take to move into information technology?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that I always thought, when I was in, class 11th, or in college doing mechanical engineering, which I did like, but I did want to try something new, was oftentimes people attach the education that they get to what the options that they can have for a career. So, like, I always thought if I was a mechanical engineer, I would just be building cars, all my life, which was pretty much not true, because I ended up foraying into, software at the end of the day. So I think what's important is keeping that eye open. And because everything is online today, you can literally go and learn anything on the internet. It is literally not that hard to go learn something new. It just requires the right amount of temperament and some curiosity about learning new things. So if you are in high school, or if you're in college, you can log into coursera.com or LinkedIn Learning, or any other MOOC that's out there, and just go type what you want to learn, and then you can always find courses of every single level. You can always talk to people that work in technology, or and it could be a friend, it could be an alumnus, it could be somebody's friend. So it's just a matter of having the right temperament.
Love it. Sid, thank you so much for your time. I think this has been really, really helpful. I think, as you mentioned, information technologies, it's a hot area. It's been hot for a while, and it's going to continue to be that way. But, one thing that you mentioned was there's still lots of demand. There's still lots of positions to be filled. And there's lots of room for bright, kind of transformational problem solvers to enter those positions. But it's important that people know what they're getting into, and I think you've helped people get some insight into what the actual day-to-day work is like. So hopefully people can land in work that they truly love, as obviously you have. So thank you so much for the time today, Sid.
Absolutely, yeah. It was a pleasure being here in the first place. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, and for everyone else, be sure to subscribe. Check out additional interviews like this with interesting people like Sid. And again, our focus is on helping people find work that they love by understanding what the real work is like. Thank you. Have a great day, and be sure to subscribe.
Thank you.